So, Joy, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you for the invitation first.
Joy, there have been a lot of these conversations around how the hospitals need to be managed or should be managed to build efficiencies. And then there are also these conversations around hospitals that are run by doctors versus hospitals that are run typically by PE or professionals. What has been your experience and what do you think is the right blend? How do you balance between the ethics of a doctor and the financial sustainability of an institution?
See, first of all, I must tell that I started my healthcare journey around 27 years back. On those days, most of the hospitals were run by a doctor, specialist in some areas, and either they used to own or they may have come up in their career and hold a huge reputation. And I have great respect, and some of them are like Dr. Devi Shetty and all in today's healthcare sector in India. They understand the whole business of healthcare. I will not distinguish that doctors are running professionally or non-clinical people are running professionally. I will tell you the entire healthcare business dynamics is very unique, very special, and the dynamics needs to be understood by people. When you run a hospital, there is something called profit, there is something called ethics, there is something called legal. Often we see that we claim as a hospital administrator that we are doing everything legally. But in the patient's perception or their expectation, there is something which is also ethical. Today, I can charge a patient any amount. I can tell I have published it, I have shared it with the patients in advance, so I have a right to charge. That is legal. But what is ethical? Am I making huge profit? Do I have a profiteering motive? That is the ethical aspect of it. Now, we need to understand as a human being where we want to fall, what we want to do. And if we manage that, if we reach an equilibrium where we meet as an operator the requirements to run the institute and at the same time remain committed to our patients, to the community at large, to see what they can afford and what they should really pay for their services, then I think it is done. I will not categorize that professionals only can run efficiently and doctors cannot, though I am not a doctor. Recent trends for last started maybe 6-7 years back, and now it is rampant, where we see the private equity and other players, operators are entering into the healthcare market. They are investing heavily. They have a huge expectation. They need to double the value of the enterprise. They need to see the return to their shareholders. So there is a huge pressure on them. So they try to operate in a different way. And that different way sometimes comes, as I mentioned here earlier, the ethical approach. If it happens, then I will tell you they may be the best of the best professionals, but their rights to stand in the healthcare sector is minimum, and probably they will perish soon or the other, because it will not be accepted, tolerated by the patients, by the community for a longer time. But there are certain exceptions also, where we have seen the investors, the private equity funds, or whoever is coming forward, they want to maintain and manage an environment which is conducive for the operators as well as for the patients, and they are going to sustain. Now, we have to decide and choose where we want to be and how we want to be. So, if we are very clear about our objective, our decision, I think we can manage and sustain. Otherwise, no one can operate in this environment with a dictator's thumb and say, I will do what I want.
Absolutely. So, Joy, I mean, you use the term profits, which is imperative for any institution to survive and grow, keep themselves updated, invest in the newest technology, etc. But they also use the term profiteering. You know, it's a thin line between profiting for the right reasons versus profiting, and this typically stems from the mindset of the top management. It's a top down approach. How do you, or where do you see is that thin line when profiteering unknowingly, subconsciously, unintently moves towards profiteering when it comes to healthcare?
See, there are enough examples, especially if you go through the media for a few months, you will get to see some of the complaints and cases have come out. Now, if I have an item to be charged to the patient and I see that I can make 100% margin on that because I have been allowed to put a particular MRP for the product, and if I try to do, I am again legal, but probably I am doing the wrong thing, and that leads to a situation which is profiteering. Slowly and steadily, probably the examples are coming into the surface because patients and the community consumers have become aware, conscious about all this, and the healthcare cost is rising. Whether we like it or not, I am from a provider, but I can tell you the healthcare cost is rising, and that cost rising not because of uh, you know things are becoming expensive in terms of goods or materials, but I can tell you all input cost, whether doctors' fees, the shortage of doctor is leading to a situation where they are like taken up by one hospital by the other, and they have been promised a good amount of fees. You think about the employees when they are moving and the minimum wages. If you think about the to retain the nurses, as because one of the most expensive commodity in this healthcare is the nurses, and if that nurse salary and all goes up, the kind of proportion of employees is to nurse is there in every hospital, the input cost is going to go up. Now, from where a hospital can earn, so they get into a situation, they get trapped into a condition where they are forced to charge patient in different heads. When that happens, then automatically the cost goes up and they get into different practices which are not right. The secondly, as I told, in Bombay most of the private hospitals are not for profit charitable hospital. Most of us, we operate not even in double digit, it is in single digit EBITDA. Whereas if you think about the private equity funding, wherever shareholders are involved, they aim for 20-25% EBITDA at the end of it. There are very limited number of hospitals today who are enjoying this kind of financial results, but when they try to achieve that, then again they need to adopt some of the practices which may not go well, gel well with the patients. So that is the reason I can tell you that profit motive, which is very right from any economics. Otherwise, there is, if I talk about business, the thing comes at the end, what is the profit?
Correct.
That profit becomes profiteering.
So very beautifully articulated that when you are looking at ensuring that your institution is making money, it is recovering the cost, it's also making profit for it to reinvest in the development of an hospital. From there, to ensure that it is the right investment, it gives me the ROI which is comparable to another sector. I think that's when it moves from profiting to profiteering. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right. Now, when we're looking at, in my opinion, there are two things that have been talked about in the last several years as a challenge in India. One is creating access to healthcare. Second is creating affordability. Right? Affordability is not just because of technology, etc. There are a lot of these business practices that are responsible for making the institution run optimally, right? So there is a role that the finance team has in the success of a well-run hospital or any healthcare institution. There's a role of procurement in terms of various models that they have imbibed. Then there is a role of HR to be, I mean, there are people who are working in on a lesser salary, but with hospitals they don't want to leave. And whereas there are doctors who are making salaries in crores, but they still threat you that they will leave and move to another hospital. So HR practices. So what do you think is the right way to manage a hospital in today's day and age, to be able to balance between the ethics and also run the institution in a manner that your your other functions apart from the medicine are being managed in a way that can contribute towards lowering the cost rather than increasing the price?
Very good question, and I have mentioned this earlier in few occasions. You told about staff and doctors are working probably with a less remuneration or charges and fees. In this same country, you will see uh, institution like CMC Vellore, you will see institution like Amrita. I tell that people are working there because they have been inspired with the values and ethics of that institution.
Mhm.
I know people are working there at a salary which may be 50-60% of what they can earn in a private institute. They are skill wise, experience wise, unparalleled. But they have a motto, they have a objective in their life, that why they are in this world and what they want to contribute. So for them things work differently.
Mhm.
But there is another set of people who are working for themselves. I don't blame them because everybody has their own desire and aspirations, and they have this never ending desire. When that happens, very difficult to you know meet all their expectation, and definitely with the rising number of healthcare institutions there will be someone or the other who can meet temporarily their expectation, and soon they will get threatened because that same person will threat that I will leave if you don't meet this thing. So that is inevitable.
Mhm.
Now you started with the point making accessible and affordable.
Correct.
I feel it is like a vicious cycle.
Mhm.
Why I think so? If you try to make it affordable, then it may not become accessible. I'll give you an example that why do I say so, and vice versa. Today, 70% of Indian population lives in rural area.
Mhm.
You try to start some facility there. Unlike your consumer product, healthcare is something, service.
Mhm.
And you will see that people, they want the doctor to be next to them, the qualified nurse to be there, and then only the actual delivery takes place rather than manufacturing a soap or shampoo and then through
Correct.
channel distribution making it accessible to the rural India. So when you want to get these inputs like your doctors, nurses in rural India, what is the type of ecosystem you have created for them to get attracted? If I go and work there, do I have a good school to put my kids in there? Do I have a good housing facility to be there? I may be morally very inspired to serve the nation and country, but I have to think about my future generation also.
Right.
So if you see in that way, though government few years back launched that wellness center as a part of that, when the budget was declared in 2021-22, Ayushman Bharat scheme, wellness center, and all this big announcement took place. But why these wellness centers are not coming up? Because it is becoming very difficult to make them available. When you are trying to make them not available, then automatically healthcare is not accessible for those people. If you want to go out of the turn and make them pay more,
Mhm.
then it will become unaffordable.
Mhm.
So it is going like a cycle.
Mhm.
So I think we need to come out from this kind of trajectory where just by paying more and more and more and ensuring that people will stay and making input cost high as a result of that higher tariff, we have to see how do you inspire people to serve to this country, to the humanity, to the rural population, and still they feel they are taken care of. So it has to reach there. Now there is no definitive solution that how it can be done, but I always admire and like the way institution like CMC Vellore or Amrita and all, they are working today, and still they are working at a, of course they have a huge flow of funds which are coming from their community followers or devotees. But I think in India also there is no dearth of that kind of funding to come. So we need to tap that and ensure that everybody is in a peace, everybody feels they are safeguarded, but at the same time they can deliver to the people.
Absolutely. And Joy, let me come to marketing. When we are looking at different functions of successfully running an organization, it is imperative today that you need to invest in marketing. Now, investing in marketing, specifically when it comes to healthcare, is not seen in the right light. It is misconstrued as trying to promote yourself. My personal understanding of branding and marketing is that how do you build a comfort in the minds of a patient that he feels that he's under the right care at the right institution, under the right, well qualified, experienced doctor. What is it that you think? Because you're a non-medico, you come from a professional side, you're running and administratively running a hospital and hospital of repute. How do you explain branding and marketing to a doctor, to a hospital, and make them understand that it's an investment for the benefit of the patient rather than saying that, hum marketing nahi karte hain. First is, what is your view on it? What is it that you think?
See, um, the sentence what you have told, that marketing is perceived as something which is not required for a hospital, because I think I am not agreeing with that. Again, there is a difference between marketing and selling. Probably all these taboos may come to the mind if you are thinking about selling. And during selling, one of the sub part of the selling is called sales promotion, where a part of your, you give either as a kickbacks. I'm using all sorts of words which
absolutely.
are
Or the metric
not,
is footfalls.
all what are not worthy to discuss in a healthcare environment, that giving some sorts of kickback, giving some sorts of sales promotion expenses you need to incur. But marketing is very important for multiple reasons, and I am a firm believer in today's healthcare world it is needed. Why? Today think about awareness kind of campaign what you do, that is nothing but marketing. So you give awareness to the patients about different diseases, you talk to them what kind of services they can avail in your hospital, from your hospital. You can tell them that in this kind of scenario what is the best kind of treatment is available. Now when somebody try to talk about I give the best possible care for this, that is going beyond marketing. But I can give care for this problem is not marketing. If I tell the best doctor or the best person is available with my hospital to solve this, I am doing something beyond what is needed. But if I tell I have best hands to do this and we can help you out, that is not marketing. So giving awareness to your target audience is marketing, and there is nothing wrong in that.
Correct.
If I think from doctors, clinicians perspective, I can tell you the doctors who are part of a system today, especially in the private, they are looking for this, because especially in the metro cities the kind of competition is arising. How do you distinguish yourself from the rest of the people?
Absolutely.
What is your USP? Again, without saying that you can do wonders, without making overpromise, if you tell them the fact and making your target audience aware about it, that is your marketing. I am all in favor of it. Now for the patients, till maybe 3.5 years back, many of these, at least I meet so many patients, not necessarily from my hospital, I am talking about in community. They used to ask that I want to undergo prostate surgery, who is the best surgeon, where it is done, lot of stigma. And very remotely, rarely people they knew there is something, a robotic surgery available for that problem. Now when you talk about this robotic surgery today, you will see most of the target audience, they are aware. Now, if you don't say robotic will have length of stay reduced, complexity reduced, less blood loss, when you talk, it is good marketing. I think they will like it. But if you start telling them I am the only person I can do it and give over promise, that is going beyond it. Like that, there are several examples I can tell you where you can use marketing as a tool and where patients will also appreciate when they get this kind of message. And in absence of marketing, probably they will not get those. And ultimately, what you are trying to do, you are trying to reach your target audience by saying, I am capable of doing this, this is something best available in the market. So I don't find anything wrong, patients will perceive.
Correct. It's very beautiful because this reminds me of one YouTube channel that I had started called Health FAQ. And this is much before pandemic came in. And when I said, I used to work at Google, so I said, let me wear a Google hat and try and understand what is it that people are searching for. And I said, let me go to a well-known doctor and tell them that, give me an answer to this, because right now, the answers that exist on YouTube, and there are plenty, are not coming from a doctor. They're coming
May not
from
be
a
authentic.
family of somebody who's been a patient, etc., saying कि मेरे father के साथ ये हुआ था, तब हमने ये किया था. But it is not something that I can use in my case.
Incredible information. Yeah.
But when the doctors started talking, they would be like, in our hospital we do this. And I said, okay, you know what? You don't say this. You're saying this is what is the right thing to do. Whether you come to me or you go anywhere else. This is the protocol. This is what you must follow. And that became like a very beautiful experience because people realized that he's genuinely giving the right advice, and that is something which is very, very difficult to find today. I mean, even when you look for references, we don't ask for कि किसी डॉक्टर को जानते हो, we ask for कोई अच्छा डॉक्टर है. By अच्छा we mean that can I somebody that you would recommend who's a genuine doctor who can give me a right advice.
Correct.
Now, in this scenario, how do you, and you had mentioned that marketing is important because how else would you differentiate yourself from everyone else? How does one doctor differentiate from somebody else who will do the same thing, is equally qualified by way of qualification and experience? What do you think is the right way to differentiate yourself from everyone else?
So, if you are talking about the individual doctors oriented marketing, I think there will be a huge challenge because no doctor as on today will try to tell the real truth or fact if they feel if that fact brings them down in comparison to the other doctor in the similar specialty. So I consider that this has to be done in the hospital level. They should project, promote their, I'll tell you, your doctor is nothing but your product.
Correct.
Who is giving the service? Basically, this is your product thing.
Absolutely.
So in typical marketing, you have STP, segmentation, targeting and positioning. So you segment the market you want to address, target whom you want to have, and then position the right thing there.
Correct.
Now, suppose in India, one of the drawbacks is where you can really distinguish yourself is your outcome measures. But in India, very rarely you will see that kind of outcome measures are monitored by hospitals or by doctors, and even if it is there, I have a big question about the credibility of those outcome measures. Everybody claims I have 99% success rate, I have 95% success rate. But if you have those kind of things which are there in the Western world, by the way, where a third party does or they measure the patient satisfaction and they give recommendations, that becomes trustworthy. But today it is more of putting my facts out to the rest of the world and see what is going on there. So I think instead of individual doctors, they can only talk about what are the things they're capable of doing, but comparing or positioning with other doctors may be little difficult task.
So do you think, when I'm listening to you and you're saying that it is not the doctor as an individual, but at an institution level you differentiate yourself. But today we are living in an era where we have and since you mentioned about measuring success, today the measurement is also moving towards patient experiences,
Yes.
right? And something which has been underrated, in my opinion, is the power of communication of the doctors, you know. And I don't blame them because they have OPD which is full, they have lack of time, they also have to see IPD, they have to visit their recovery of the patients who have undergone surgery, etc. So they don't have time, you know, and they will tell you something, and they've done their responsibility of informing you, not trying to figure out whether you've understood in the right way or not. And not just the patient, between the doctor and the nurse also this happens. How would a hospital deal with such kind of a situation? Because when a patient comes and meets the doctor, based on the conversation or the type of conversation, would he choose that, listen, I don't know if I'm satisfied or not? Because uh, a patient does not come to a hospital by choice.
Correct.
You know, they're coming because they have a problem and they have to be dealt with. That problem needs to be dealt with. So he's coming there, मजबूरी में आता है. But अगर मजबूरी में दो जगह हैं जो equally good हैं, and they are both, you have qualified doctors, etc., then I have, where do I want to choose to go to even when I'm in distress, right? वो confidence कैसे as a hospital you'll build in through your doctors. I mean, this is a very typical situation where, and you have very, very senior doctors. You have to treat them with respect.
Correct.
Otherwise, they will threaten to leave you. So, as an hospital administrator, how do you manage this need?
See, very difficult question, and I'll tell you very simple answer.
Mhm.
That that kind of stigma that if a doctor speaks well, then only that patient will come back, and then only that patient will, you will have so many patients for your hospital. Those days have gone.
Mhm.
Still today, I can tell you some of the doctors who may not have a excellent communication. Maybe 20-30% patients get attracted with that sweet talk, but still, if their family members or GPs outside or somebody who takes name of a doctor whom they believe and trust, that becomes the primary thing for them to select and go to the doctor. I know, I'm sure you know that 2 years back, Times of India had a front page story where they said that in India, doctors in the OPD spend 2.5 minutes with
Correct.
each patient.
Correct.
Even if I extrapolate and put it for the private sector, it may become 7 to 8 minutes.
Correct.
So this 7 to 8 minutes is like an elevator pitch for the patients, because they have a lot of questions, still they get whatever limited answer, and they are out by the time 7 minutes, 8 minutes over. During that, if the doctor is not very nice, not communicating well, but if they feel they got the solution, if they feel that doctor is capable of solving their problem, they will come. So communication, the way it is in the Western world, they give HCAP score, that how the doctor was and what kind of time they have spent. It is not still there in India. So hospitals may get worried that how do you maintain the patient experience and attract them. But I can tell you some of the busy hospitals in this country, where some of the busy OPDs for certain doctors, where limited minimum communication, but still their thing will be thronging because the kind of perception those patients have regarding that doctor. So experience still hospitals has to create for the rest of the non-clinical areas, when patient walk in, billing, how they have been treated, how is the environment and all. But inside doctor's room, still today the doctor's skill and the way they have been recommended by some of the, I'll not say KOL, but probably some of the opinion makers who makes maximum impact on the patient, that still matters.
So my last question to you, Joy, is The overall perception in the healthcare industry among the patients has been that a gray haired old doctor with 40 years of experience is a better doctor, right? And it was rightful also because in those 30, 40 years of practice, they would have seen cases which a younger doctor may not have come across yet,
Yes.
right? But then in the last, more in last one decade, but typically if you see last 15, 20 years, the technology started speeding up. But in the last one decade, robotics, AI, these have started bringing a change in how you treat the patient much quicker. And this is also getting updated more frequently than ever before.
Correct.
Some of the older doctors are not very receptive to change because of their age, experience, comfort of doing a particular protocol in a particular way for many, many years. How do you balance between the very, very senior, experienced doctors and the younger ones who, apart from academics, are trained on newer technology versus an old doctor who is extremely, apart from training, has a huge experience? How do you how do you manage between the two? I mean, what's in it for the patient? What's in it for the hospital? And how can we bring the comfort among the patient with the younger doctors who, by the visibility aspect, don't seem that experienced?
First of all, I want to tell you that so-called gray-haired, very experienced doctors, they have apathy towards the new technology and AI. What I also used to believe till maybe a year or so before, but I don't believe that now.
Are they forced
In
to look
my
at technology?
hospital, no, in my hospital, I can tell you 3 doctors. Uh, 2 are above 65 and 1 is close to 65. They have undertaken in their own program in AI. And they are working relentlessly to see how they can apply their part of some of the startups and innovation what is going on for their specialties to see the adaptation of it. After seeing them, my mindset also changed, that it is not that they are averse to this change, and believe me, they are some of the busiest doctors. It is not that they are free and they are just taking it up. Now when you say so-called younger doctor and all, one segment of your patients and community today, Gen Z, and we have seen the kind of the way they search and look for a doctor. They go to Google, they see the rating, they look at who is coming up in the search engine optimization after that, but they are not the majority. Wherever that segment of people are there, they decide, they select sometimes the wrong person, because in the you know how you can be flashed on the top of your search, how can you come up, those things are there, and they are doing that. So when that happens, I will say that their decision may not be right always. Having said that, some of the younger, if you see some of the super specialty areas today in this country where the training has been started not more than 5-10 years back. If you take about geriatric medicine, if you think about palliative care, these are some of the areas where there was no one trained 15 years back. So you will not see grey-haired people are there in your hospital and managing. So in those areas, inevitably somebody very young and all, and they are getting recognized, and people are very clear that whether so and so is trained in that. So automatically they come. Now some of the conventional specialties which are there for ages, for them also today there are so many ways when you can project and present. So let us say a specialty like orthopedics. Now in orthopedics, I don't think 10-15 years back there was any system where somebody will be known for infection cases in orthopedics, somebody's specialist.
So it's gone deeper into a niche.
Niche. So when somebody has done paper presentation and all, and they may be in their early 40s, but they are the real heroes for their specialty.
Got
So
it.
people they come for. So we need to see this so-called younger generation. What is their expertise? How do you project that, and how do you tell people that why they should choose or select that young doctor? That is the skill, and that is the need of the hour.
So that is more of a, I think, what I hear you say is that there's no one over the other,
Yeah.
but it's a more of a collaborative approach, and it's about how the patients are finding their doctor, who they would
Yes.
choose to go to.
Yes.
It reminds me of 2012 when I was invited to go speak at a conference, and I wasn't very active in the healthcare space then. I was very new to the space, but I came from a digital background, and I was talking about that what I was hearing from doctors, and I had spoken to over 100 doctors at that point in time, and each one said that, Harbinder, you know, you're talking of digital, but that's not how we get our patients. Our patients come to us through word of mouth. And what I was telling them was that patients will still come through word of mouth, but the word of mouth itself will change. It will not be your patients, their families. It will be online when they will go and find out. Like typically, they find a which phone to buy. Can somebody suggest? Should it be an iPhone versus Android? They will say that, listen, I'm looking for somebody an ENT surgeon. Can you suggest which ENT surgeon to go to? And somebody who's not even been to your clinic will come online and say that, listen, I've heard that this doctor is good, you might want to try. So I think that's the change that we have started experiencing, and which is what you're also validating, that Gen Z finds
Correct.
their doctor differently and they go
Yes.
online and search for it. And one more change that I've seen, and maybe you can tell me whether you agree with it or not, is that we socially in India were people who had extended families. We were in a joint family system traditionally, where we had a lot of people who would support you with your decision making. And you would have somebody that you would go and ask that, listen, who do you suggest I go to? And they would validate your answer or will help you make your choices. And then within India, we have had a huge migrant population, people who have moved to large cities, and their ecosystem around them is not of the friends and family. So who do you ask? You are in a new place and you don't know anyone. So you typically start relying on what is online, or in absence of that, you will go to the nearest hospital. Because earlier on, people would go to a hospital because of a doctor. Now they're going to a hospital because of the confidence that, listen, I will be provided with the right doctor. Do you agree with this?
So, three things. First, if I am in a new place, I don't know anyone, I have a problem, still so-called established brands takes over the selection of a doctor. Still I know people who have moved to, let us say in Mumbai, they know this hospital is good, I can rely and go, they will go. In case of emergency, no choice, they ever. Second, I know several requests what comes. Suppose I have moved from Delhi to Bombay, I reach out to my person whom I trust in Delhi and tell, can you tell me, do you know someone whom I can go? I get this kind of request very often.
Right.
Like they don't know, they may have recently moved, and then they reach out and then I get a call. They may have a friend or somebody in some hospital. That person may not know everybody also here, but they will ask. Not necessarily they call me to ask who is there in Hinduja, but they say, in Mumbai, can you suggest? They live in such and
Correct.
such location, can you tell? The third thing is, when you are a newcomer here, that times you may develop some proximity with some people in your community. You go and knock the door and tell them that, can you recommend? So these are the three ways it happens.
Fantastic. Joy, thank you so much for this conversation. It was, very few people do you have a conversation around marketing, etc.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful talking to you and understanding your perspective as somebody who's not a medico but has a responsibility to run a reputed healthcare delivery institution. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.